in my time, we were beginning to, things were becoming freer, such as from having the desks all in rows. I started putting them in groups, and the others didn't, but I thought with the little boys and the primers that to group the desks would be better for them. But otherwise, it was the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. and the teacher sort of standing at the end. And the children were under pretty strong, firm discipline.
Earlier days, of course, it was chalk and talk. The children sat up with spines rigid and hands stretched down their sides and listened. But of course things have changed dramatically since those days with audio-visual equipment and these special plastic boards where 2 children can share one and work out mathematical problems and so forth under the guidance of a teacher, which means that every child is concentrating on the task. In the old talk and chalk, a child could have a wee sleep in the background knowing that Bill Bloggs would answer all the questions. And of course the actual teaching of the subject went in one ear and out the other.
I think it's been a very exciting time. And the reason I would say this is that given the more open techniques of teaching, the much more cooperative and collaborative approach that we have, we're much more able to take boys into arenas that we never would have thought of before. And I truly believe that if once upon a time people would say that school was boring, I think for a senior student, for an 11, 12-year-old boy, and of course those are the boys that I'm dealing with, to say that today, I think, is nothing short of crazy.
For many, this metal frame will help to explain the passage of the sun and the moon in a new and more interesting way.
So that shadow's going to go that way. But when it's right in the middle of the day, the shadow's going to be in a straight line. So we call that
120 pounds.
But lessons in the past also included some well-remembered events.
Has acquired a speed of approximately 8,000 meters or 4.8 miles per second.
Dean, do you remember the time when the Sputnik came over? You were generating a bit of interest, and we've been watching it in the media and on the newspaper. And I recall that you took Philip Johnson and I up to the top of the tower one night. And very vividly I can recall that we looked up in the sky and there it was, twinkling away and passing overhead. That was just absolutely amazing.
And control of the vital activities of the animal passenger.
So I sort of hit this Form 1 stage and had this proliferation of activities, which was quite phenomenal. I've never really, that was probably my peak back in Form 1, when you can do a lot of things to not too high a level and enjoy them all. So I was able to sing in the choir and play in the orchestra and do gymnastics, play a lot of sport, and also I used to love my work in those days. As I continue to do later.
And you see the great breadth of things that are offered to the children these days, as you say, in particular, computer, CDT, etc. I remember feeling at the opening of the CDT room that it would have been a great thing to have had that during our time. My wife thinks that I'm probably the least impressive person in the world when it comes to practical things, and I'm certain the CDT centre might have given me a chance.
We did have woodwork, if I remember rightly, but that
down in Newmarket, yeah.
What
was that bloke's Askew?
Askew was his
used
name,
to beat you with 2 hands.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, very,
a sadist.
He was a sadist, and the stuff we made wasn't very effective. I see the stuff that was coming out of the CDT centres now. It's just magnificent. It's really innovative and worthwhile.
I think one of the things that we have to work out for young people today is to define the fine line between what we mean by being educated and being skilled, because I do believe there is a subtle difference. I think we're going to have any number of people in the future who will be very highly skilled, they will be technically efficient, they will be up to date with all the latest in technology, but what this does for them necessarily as human beings, I'm not quite so sure. And I think a school like this has a wonderful opportunity in its all-round approach, in its cultural activities, in its sporting activities, in its spiritual dimension, in all the things that it continues to offer to the boys here to create the total person.
Yes, I believe that the quality of King's is both in the education that they actually provide, is really backed up by the fact that they have quality buildings. I mean, this you try and teach in a series of prefabs. I believe that there is no heritage that the boys have, you know, in assimilation with the quality of their surroundings. And that's where buildings such as the Hannah Block and even the towers, though they're wooden, have that quality, and the boys can relate it to. They've got worn steps, you know, it's like Christ College. I mean, everything gets worn and finger marked, and that's part of the character, you know, and it actually involves a fair amount of construction techniques that we can't even replicate today. Looking at various details around the school, we can see examples of age and history, as in the fretwork of the balustrades of the Towers building, and in the simple rustic lines of the chapel. After the construction of the last major building, the Carriage Block, built in 1969, the Memorial Hall refurbishing continued the use of materials and details which provide an enduring visual form and gives the audience comfortable seating, along with modern lighting and sound systems. Dining room construction was carried out to enhance and regain the grandeur of the spaces of the Tower building, while King's Corridor was remodelled, shown here in the original design sketches, to change a drab passageway into a gallery of sporting trophies and school history.
Mind you, some memories of early buildings and rooms aren't always quite so happy.
I was in the basement. It was probably the basement with the best view in Auckland, but it was a dungeon, as the kids used to call it. It was all concrete brick walls all the way around, right underneath the terrace at the front of the school. Tiny little windows, which every month or so completely disappeared under a layer of ivy, so there was no light at all. It was an ideal art room. It was completely black. And when it rained, the drains blocked and it flooded with water. So after a few weeks of winter weather with water all over the floor and very, very slippery, you can imagine, with clay and paint and everything around, I went stumping up to Hugh Abbott and said, look, if you don't do something, I'll have to give this one away. I want gumboots at least. Anyway, his solution was to supply us with a squeegee. And every period, one boy was given the job of standing by the door with a squeegee and squeegeeing the water out through the door as it flowed up through the floor. But even so, it was quite a swamp inside and very damp. Nothing would stick on the walls. An art room, as you can imagine, and here I was sellotaping things to the walls, and then the rain would come and everything would fall off the walls.
Fortunately, things have improved since then. They may not have such a wonderful view, but the facilities are vastly improved.
4 more colours to go, right? So there you've got, just show the camera. So you've got the yellow and your red stage, great. You just sort of spread out on the glass.
He caned me for cutting up the Art Master's strap. I was giving out souvenirs of the strap right around the school, and I left an inch or so of strap in the Art Master's drawer so that he had something.
But I'm very glad to say that art now takes its place in the educational system where it really belongs.
In those days, I think it was Miss Garland who was the teacher, and she was tremendous with the young boys, and she established in the school the art weeks, whereby parents became involved with the children for a whole week of creative art.
The support that came from so many different areas for the school was far and wide. The parents, the fee-paying clients, roused around to support, to be there, and in very demanding times and patterns, they were always very cooperative and very helpful and keen to ensure that their sons gained the best of education.
There's no doubt if you get people working together, they enjoy supporting something. It's the strength of the parents that's imparted into the children, and I think it's a very healthy thing for the school.
You know, really looking back, and it was a marvellous experience, the 86 Gala, with all those people of the school and all part of the school, and really the King's family came together. All those ladies who did such a marvellous job, and who really, without them, the thing wouldn't have been a success at all.
And the staff too. The staff all came in. There was a number of young teachers there at the time, and they all got involved and got behind it. It was really brought the family of the school together. It was great.
But Richard was the driving force behind all the commitments. Yes. I think a lot of parents wanted to be involved because Richard so appreciated their involvement.
Mm. And from the committee's point of view, if ever we asked for involvement from the staff, Richard was right behind us. We were sending messages home with the children in their bags, and we got tremendous help from Richard and from all the staff. So we couldn't have done any work on the work on the committee without that help.
He was a motivating force that really enthused everybody and gave us the drive to keep on going.
My rounding off about the supporters of the school could be regarded as the 3 Fs, the families, the friends and the foundation, because those united together would have unparalleled strength of any school in Auckland. And it's so important for a school to preserve these things.
Here in the chapel, we really enjoy and celebrate life. We start the term, we end the term, we start each day. The whole idea is to bring into the lives of the boys a real sense of joy, like in that hymn, God who created me, nimble and light of limb, in 3 elements free, to run, to ride, to swim, not when the sense is dim, but now from the heart of joy I would remember him, take the thanks of a boy.
I guess that the most important thing for me about this place and about King's School is what it means to me now, 40 years on. And I believe that King's was the first place that gave me an opportunity to show some confidence, to do things that I'd never done before, to be part of a team. And all those things were important to me in my later life, and I value King's School for that, and I hope that's what it's doing for kids today.
History is the future. This school will be at its greatest, provided that we acknowledge that education is not really just in the classroom.
The whole philosophy of King's School is based on certain beliefs. Firstly, the preservation of independence. The belief in the freedom of choice becomes very exciting for us to see the wider developments in the educational community. Other beliefs of King's School are providing superior quality in service and developing individuals to the fullest extent. When I look back at the work continued by Brett Butler, I hold him in the greatest esteem. He's a high quality man who has much to offer King's School. O floret semper, scholar regis, may King's School flourish forever.
Well, there it is. A lot has happened in the years I've been at school, which is 50 years, and a lot will happen in the future as you grow up.
Do you think we've changed very much, sir?
Yes, in many ways you have. But in other ways you're exactly the same as the children I taught here when I first came in 1944. However, I am pleased to say that certain basic values never seem to change. And that's important. Better get back to class. And don't dawdle on the way. Off you go.
Time to go home on Sunday, knowing that your mother and father received that letter you've written to them. You didn't put much in that letter, did you? Because you knew who was going to read it.
Well, I made a mistake the first time that Riggy was checking it. I wrote, "Dear Mum and Dad, I hope you're well. Mr. Rigdon is going to read this letter, so blah, blah, blah," for which I was duly punished, of course.
Yes, no, the letter writing. My God.
Well, the exit Sundays were few and far between too. We couldn't go away every Sunday.
No, he used to come to our place and roast dinners.